I wanted to do a little bit of a rundown, like a preview, I guess I should call it, when it comes to Top Esports T1 and Hanwha Life versus BLG, because I think both of these series are really interesting, right? Most interesting thing about both of these series is that I think all four, so on the Hanwha Life BLG, both of those teams, I would say, have been underperforming expectations. They both are looking worse than expected when it comes to their form. There's a lot of things you can look to in the game, which we'll get to in a second, as to why these teams are underperforming. But on the other side of things, it feels like Top Esports and T1, based on expectations, I mean, I think some people thought that T1 would perform well in this tournament, like myself included. I thought that they would be able to bounce back into this tournament, but it wasn't really based on any analysis. It's just kind of like, they normally are pretty good at international tournaments, so I expect them to get it together again because they understand the format. They're comfortable here. Obviously, they have the ability to lean on the fact that they recently won a world championship. They're the defending world champions, and they understand what they did to get to that point, because also last year coming into Worlds, you have to consider that they were in a similar spot where they also were not doing that well domestically. I mean, they did make finals, but they had the rough summer when they had Poby swapping in, and then in finals they got 3-0 clapped by Gen G, so they looked a lot significantly worse than Gen G domestically. But they were able to make it. Most likely, they're going to have to go through Gen G again if they do win, because I'm not sure how well FlyQuest is going to play into Gen G. But that being said, Top Esports and T1, I think both are outperforming what the expectations should have been pre-tournament. Top Esports has looked pretty good when it comes to like areas that you'd always be questioning internationally. So, for example, TN has been playing really well. But I wanted to get to a couple of these. Let's start with T1 versus Top Esports, because I think T1 versus Top Esports is kind of interesting. They played each other once already, but things have changed significantly from this period. So if you look at this match with Top Esports and T1, this was one of the first games of the tournament overall, of the main stage overall. We got the Yone ban into Cream, obviously, and they banned Tristana and Ziggs. I don't think either of these bans are actually required. Another interesting thing about this game is because it was early on in the tournament, people didn't really know how high to prioritize the Skarner. So Skarner is picked 4-5. You're never getting Skarner for 4-5 anymore. Right now, the current meta is like Yone Aurora bans for red side plus whatever one they want. So it's like Yone Aurora +1. Sometimes people will ban Ashe if they think enemy team is a really good Ashe player. Sometimes it could be Ziggs. Sometimes it could be Jax if you're playing into the bin. It could be Sejuani. I think Peanut has been getting Peanut has been getting Poppy bans. Let's see what else Peanut got when he's on red side. Let's see. Hanwha Life, Gen G. Yeah, small. I mean, this is a different situation because they're trying to trade both. But yeah, I think that these are interesting things. Now, one thing that I think Top Esports has an advantage in, or perceived advantage going forward, and one of the problems for T1 to try to figure out, is it doesn't seem like T1 is a huge Aurora team or a Yone team. Like, if you think about T1 and how they want to play, they normally would not want Faker to play Yone. If there's one player you want playing Yone on T1, it is generally going to be Zeus. He's one of the best Yone players in the world. Might even be the best Yone player. It just happens that he plays top lane. So because he plays top lane, there's a lot of rough matchups that you can get in that lane. If you play into like Jax, if you play into Renekton, like all these matchups are kind of annoying for the Yone side of things. The other thing that I think Top Esports has shown is that Top Esports is actually willing to do the Yone Aurora trade. So where is it? They did that, I believe, versus Showmaker. So if we go down here, hold on. So right here, Top Esports showed that on red side, they are comfortable doing the Yone Aurora trade. Now, I don't know if T1 is actually going to be comfortable with the Yone Aurora trade. Like, that doesn't seem winning. Unless they're willing to, like, flex it really early. If they're willing to flex it to Zeus, maybe they could do it. But I feel like this could actually be one of the first problems that T1 is going to have to solve when it comes to draft. Like, I think that there's going to be a very important game when T1 is on blue side in either game 1 or game 2, depending on how the series is going, where T1 is going to have to make a tough decision where it's like they're going to have to probably show a Yone game because Top Esports is going to leave both up. They're going to leave Yone up. They're going to try to give Yone get Aurora themselves. And T1 is going to need to win that game to prove that they can play it. If not, we might end up in a situation where T1 ends up having to expend a lot of bans even on blue side. They might have to ban Yone and Aurora on blue side, because the other thing to consider is that let's say they try to do the other thing. So one thing you can do if with the Yone Aurora is you ban one to try to make the other team ban the other. Now, one thing we saw from Top Esports, even though it didn't work here, you have to consider what the strategy is. And I think that they would probably run this strategy back potentially, which is Top Esports ban Aurora and they leave Yone. So like, let's say you banned one on blue side. Let's say T1 ends up banning Aurora themselves. I think that there's an angle where Top Esports doesn't ban Yone, gives Yone for free to Faker, and they try to play something like Lucian into it. I think this is something that you can definitely do into a player like Faker. I think the other options that are other Cream champions, like for example, Cream is really good at playing Akali, for example. Like some people like playing Akali into Yone. Some other people play LeBlanc. I don't expect a LeBlanc from Cream, but I think he would be willing to test the waters there and play into Faker Yone with a champion like Lucian, or maybe even an assassin. Could even be like a Sylas, depending on the game, etc. So like, let's say you draft something like, you know, Yone Maokai, something like this. This is one of those games where Sylas becomes very attractive for like this would actually be a pretty fucking good Sylas angle. If you didn't already have the Rumble, I mean, you could still, even with the Rumble, draft Sylas. But when they have Maokai Gnar, I think that is a Cream Sylas angle. And as we've been seeing in the tournament, it seems like Sylas has risen in priority. People were not really playing this champion at all. Scout ended up playing it. Let's see, when did Scout end up playing it? Yeah, he ended up playing it versus Dom1. And it looked pretty good in that circumstance. So another thing you have to consider is that Sylas has risen in prio. LNG started playing it here, and then as a result, we had more Sylases come in. We had Caps play Sylas later on in the tournament. We had Knight play Sylas later on in the tournament, and that is something that I feel like you kind of just need the edge. And then Hanwha Life here ended up playing it as well into FlyQuest. So Sylas is coming back for the players that are Sylas players, and Cream is a big Sylas player. So there's a lot of angles that I would see. But yeah, I think that there's going to be a very crucial game early in the series when it comes to T1 versus Top Esports, where Top Esports, because it is a best of 5, you have the ability to open things like this. You have the ability to force the enemy team to prove that they're able to play the OPs, because a lot of the teams just don't play the OPs. We saw it with FlyQuest and Team Liquid. They're not good at playing the Aurora plus the Yone. Fly ended up playing it at the end, but it's something that it's clear they don't really want to play. This is we're going to get to it in a second, but I think that this is a problem that BLG is experiencing at the tournament, which is that they don't really want to play those champs. When you think about Yone, the players that really want to be playing Yone in the bracket stage, I would say Scout really wants to play Yone. His Yone was very good all year. I would say Chovy really wants to play Yone, Zika really wants to play Yone, and Cream really wants to play Yone. The other guys can play it and will play it. Like, I don't think there's any team that actually can't play it at all, the same way the Team Liquid can't play it at all. I think the other teams will play it if it's given to them in a really good situation, but I don't think they really want to play it. So yeah, like BLG has the same issue when it comes to draft. I think that's one of the issues that they're going to have versus Hanwha Life. So yeah, that's one thing that we need to start considering in the draft. Now, T1 has a lot of things working for them right now. I'd say one thing that's working for them is Owner is in really good form, and he seems like one of the best Vi players in the tournament. So if Skarner is out, for example, and he's playing Vi, I think that he's one of the people that will be willing to shoulder the Vi versus Sejuani matchups, things like this. So that's interesting. That's something that T1 can lean on. Also, you have to consider that Top Esports has had an issue with 2v1ing. So if you go Top Esports versus T1 12 days ago, let's go here. And if you look at the 2v1, Top Esports has made some crucial mistakes in the 2v1. So you look at this game, and this game should literally just be over from draft, or from 2v1 rather. Renekton starts top here. He sees the ward through the lane. He's already started Q. So he started Q when Zeus walked in to try to get a chunk, which is obviously not good, because as Renekton, if you are going to be in a 2v1 situation, you want to have W and E both up. So you had 369 make this crucial mistake, and I think a lot of Top Esports TS's struggles when it comes to 2v1s goes through 369. I just think he's making a lot of like bad decisions when it comes to what to do in the 2v1. So here he ends up getting super like he can't go top at all. The Rakan is leeching bot, so they're getting experience bot lane, but because 369 had already died, he ended up getting killed, and he can't go top lane. He's late to the bot dive. He's like leeching level 2 off mid, and because of this, it's very hard for them to dive Keria. This was actually really nice from Keria. Ends up living. Okay. Then 369 TP's top, but he's really far behind. And you see the way that T1 snowballs it. They end up with like going into the mid game. Like, I mean, it's just 2k gold lead just from this. And if you look at other games, even Top Esports versus FlyQuest, or versus Fnatic, for example, there's mistakes made when it comes to the 2v1 here as well. So 369 is trying to stay for a wave that he's not able to stay for. Normally you'd have like support here with the top laner if you're trying to stay on this wave. If not, what you generally have to do is you just have to back off and go somewhere else and make sure that Cassante can't get the wave. But if you look at this game, if this is a better team than Fnatic and you see what the result of the 2v1 ends up being, like Oscar flashes, Oscar is level 4, 369 is level 2, and the wave is pushing to Oscar here. So once again, top esports 2v1ing, I think, is a bit of an issue. When it comes to like team fighting though and skirmishing, I feel like that's where top esports has been really good this tournament. Like, the only game they were getting out skirmished in was versus Gen G, and I think a lot of that came down to the fact that versus Gen G specifically, they had a weird Herald fight, or weird grub fight, I should say. I keep on calling them Herald fights, but really I just mean like where everyone's topside. It was a grub fight around 8 minutes. Yone got 2 kills, and that changes the way that you actually end up team fighting. So yeah, because of 369's mistake in the 2v1, he ends up getting ganked here by Razork. This is something that's really big, and there's not really much he can do in this situation because of the mistake he made prior. So because he's already made the mistake, he's trying to crash his wave, and he's no flash, and he just ends up getting ganked and dying. And this is the timer where Oscar is hitting level 6 and 369 is only level 5. So I think a lot of this is the issue for top esports. So 2v1s I think will be really good for T1 in this series. I think that's kind of like the beginning of it. A lot of the other issues that you're going to see are going to transpire through the series. Like, I think that this is kind of the starting point where we go into it, and I think top esports is willing to test the waters with the Yone Aurora up. Also, I'm pretty sure T1 just doesn't really play Aurora. I don't think it's a real T1 champion. I mean, it was banned against them by Pain. T1 here versus BLG, they banned it both sides. T1 was on red side here, so they banned it both sides. So they haven't played it yet this tournament. They probably would be willing to give it a shot. I mean, it does sound like it would be a decent Faker champion, but I think that is something that is potentially testable from top esports as well. I really think that Yone Aurora are going to be 2 champions that top esports is going to try to leverage early on in the series versus T1, and based on if T1 plays those champions, if they play it well, or if they're just not willing to play it, I think that this is what is the starting point for the series. And then a lot of times, as time goes on in the series, you start adapting through the lens of what has been happening in the games. It's like, okay, they actually did play a good Aurora game, or like, is this Aurora game real? I mean, the Aurora Nocturne is something I could maybe see T1 playing. This is something that Gen G played. They did the Aurora Nocturne Ari. I would think that T1 is the type of team where if they play Aurora, they want Aurora to be mid lane as opposed to top lane. I think that Zeus wants to have more like scaling throughout the game. If you look at T1's games, right, they have him play Gnar. They had the Gragas game where the Gragas is actually scaling super well in this game versus G2. And it's also a really good answer to Jax. So this is a game where like the Gragas is going to be super tanky. You saw it later on. Like you want Zeus to have the ability to use the fact that he side lanes well and he understands how to get strong in the games. You want to try to use that over 369. And historically, Zeus has been kind of a 369 killer internationally when it comes to at least Worlds. I think at MSI, 369 kind of clapped him. It was just way more useful than him. But at Worlds, when they played each other last year, he performed much better. I will say that in both of these metas, the last 2 times that he played against 369, it was like Aatrox meta at Worlds, and 369 is the type of guy that's like blinding Aatrox, and you get multiple Yone games. I think he got like 3 Yone games so far into 369 Aatrox, and he just claps them all the time. So we'll see if this ends up carrying on. It seems like 369 has been kind of on the Rumble kick, which is not something that I really expect T1 to want to play, even though Zeus can play it. It's just not really a Zeus champion. Like, it kind of falls into the same bucket as Renekton, where you don't scale super well. It's just like you're kind of locked in your bubble. You're trying to just do your own thing. And this is something that normally I don't think is the best for T1. So maybe like game 1, we see a lot of things left up by top esports. I'm not sure who's going to get blue side. T1 will probably get blue side because, you know, Ryan wants them to have a good tournament. No, I'm just kidding. But if T1 gets blue side, I think that there could be a game 1, a crucial game 1 where it's like we see T1 playing like the Vi Yone Rumble or Sejuani Rumble Yone, one of these, and then top esports is playing Aurora plus Cassante plus X, and then they just try to play the game from there, and depending on that game, we get to see what gets banned in the next games. But yeah, the Jax could be useful. Hanwha Life. Now, Hanwha Life versus BLG is very weird because they're both the number 1 seeds. I mean, these are the teams that won LPL and LCK, and they both have had kind of fraud offs. Like, the thing about Hanwha Life that's been so weird is that Hanwha Life domestically was very good when they had solid leads. Like that was one of the things, is once they got the leads, they weren't throwing it. And if you look at most of their games this tournament, I mean, some people will say like, oh, maybe it's like they're not taking the other team serious. I don't know why you wouldn't take teams serious at Worlds. I think that's like a cope angle. If you look at games like this, when Hanwha Life has this 3.5k gold lead domestically, and they have Doran on Jax, which is one of his best champions, they have Zika on Smolder, like they're playing this comp, you'd see them almost never throw. And then you look throughout this game and they make this bad play. They have Peanut soloing Drake. G2 is forcing out this side of the map. They kill the Jax. Go for Delight as well. They don't end up killing him, but they get a tier 2. And you look at the gold lead and it's like, okay, well, the gold lead is definitely closer now than it was. And then there's the next play where Doran has no TP. There's a TP disadvantage for Doran because BB has his TP quicker. And you see on the next timer where Broken Blade has his teleport. And people really blame G2, right? They're like, oh, man, like G2 missed time to teleport. Same thing happened to Hanwha Life here, by the way. And it was catastrophic. It's the same thing that happens because the Poppy TP first. He has a TP window on the Jax, and Hanwha Life mistimes it, and then they end up behind the turret in a 4v5. And I mean, you look at what this is, like, what is the result of this? That's just Baron. I feel like these are the plays that Hanwha Life has been making that to me make them seem vulnerable, because they've been pretty bad around Baron, I would say, the entire time. Like, you look at this game, they kind of threw, all things considered. You look at the game that they played versus Hanwha Life versus Fly, game 1. You look at game 1, they have a similar mistake around Baron where they should just be closing the game out. I mean, the game is really sided towards them. They're up 4k gold. And then they do a Baron throw. Once again, they've been bad around Baron. They do this play here. They make this play. I mean, they end up getting Baron in this one. Delight is just trying to suicide to make sure that Inspired gets it. And Inspired just gets into the pit. R flashes. Bubble kills. Goes on to Viper. And suddenly they're like low-key getting outscaled in this game. I really think that this game, they were just outscaled. Now, they ended up winning this game off Grump. We saw this a bunch of times. They lost another fight over here. And I saw people saying Peanut has been looking good. I honestly don't think Peanut has been looking that good in this group stage so far. He definitely doesn't look as good as he looked in LCK. Now, obviously, he was great in LCK, but it just doesn't feel like he has that same effect. Now, obviously, there's certain picks that I think could come in for him. Like the Poppy is something that gives them a lot of pressure because one of the champions that Shun wants to play is Vi. Like, Shun really likes playing Vi and Wukong and Xin, and you don't want to prio those champions when you play against Peanut Poppy. So maybe that's an angle for Peanut. I actually wonder if things like Shun playing Brand could be an angle versus Hanwha Life with a lot of the comps they like doing. But yeah, one of the advantages of Hanwha Life, you know everything I just kind of said about T1 and them not really wanting to play Aurora and Yone, and that being something that top esports could use. I think it's the opposite for the Hanwha Life BLG, where Hanwha Life wants to play the Yone, they want to play the Aurora. They're more comfortable with these types of picks, and I think BLG is not as comfortable playing Yone and Aurora. Like, Knight doesn't really want to play Yone. I think if Yone's left up versus Knight, he's going to need to play a good Yone game in the series in order to get people on board with it. Like, he can play it, he's played it before, but it's not something that he is particularly good at. And when you have players like Knight, and even like players like Faker, for example, in T1, because Faker is good at Ahri, because he's good at making plays with other champions, he's good at Orianna, for example, as well. Like the Ori Nocturne combo would be something that would be good for T1 in general, I would say. Because he's good at those types of picks, I think that it's one of those things where it's like the devil you'd rather give him a Yone and be like, okay, he'll play Yone. It's not going to be like the worst Yone of all time, but it's probably not going to be amazing either. And like there, we're gonna know what we're playing into. If Cream plays his Lucian into Yone, is that going to be bad for top esports? I think it's the same type of thing here, where it's like if Knight is off Ahri, if he's off like playmakers, if he's off Silas, champions that he's known to be really good on. I mean, he was always good at Talia, for example. If he's off these types of champions, how much is that going to help your Hanwha Life as a team into BLG? think these are things you have to consider. I mean, this game, the reason why I'm showing this game for Hanwha Life is it's another game where I think that they just threw, to be honest. Like, they had pretty good lead, and then they started just dying randomly. And they're making plays like this. They just got caught over pushing multiple times. Like, look at these deaths. Look at the deaths that they have. They have this death mid from Viper, where he has no flash, no cleanse. They just go on him. Really fucking unlucky there that Busio ends up getting the kill. And then Zika is over pushing top, but will just hit around the corner. He's over pushing top. He dies. So now, like, there's no pressure. Like, this is a sequence that's pretty bad. Like, normally when somebody dies on the map in a pro game, right, you just want to stabilize, reset, and then, like, once he's back on the map, then you regain tempo when you're the team in the lead. You saw Hanwha Life have Viper die, so they have no pressure mid. So in this case, like, Delight is mid, and Peanut is mid too. So they put two people mid. Then Zika dies, and then in the same rotation, Renekton dies. So they chain death. They had 3 chain deaths in a row here, off one tempo play. And I think that versus BLG, like, this is not kind of acceptable because BLG is really Chinese. They want to fight you. So these are issues that I see with them right now. For BLG, like, I feel like BLG is such a weird team to try to diagnose because, like, Hanwha Life has made some consistent errors, like where you can see like their play around Baron has been struggling, etc. But when you look at a team like BLG, it's like BLG is just up things that they were good at the entire time, but they're up different things in different games. So it just looks like BLG is more like just like mentally in their own way as opposed to doing a certain thing consistently bad. It's like, is BLG just going to calm down and play better? I think the general point here, I would say, is just that Hanwha Life has been messing up things consistently that they weren't domestically. Same with BLG, bro. Like, BLG has had such ass games. I mean, the first one versus PSG was really weird to watch because it's like, I mean, the main thing that I would say is On has been really sketchy so far. I thought his Alistar game was really good, but outside of that game, he really hasn't looked like himself the entire tournament. His Leona this game, I mean, it just looked like he was a free kill the entire time. Maybe it's not the best pick to go for in this type of game anyway, but yeah. It is pretty nice by Woody because it's blind in the brush. That's actually really nice from Woody, to be honest. Completely blind. You Q from the brush, so he doesn't know that you're charging up Q, so he can't flash it. Pretty impressive, to be honest. It's also just one of those things where when you watch this fight, it's like, how fucking useless is Wukong at this point in the game? I mean, even Bin this game, like, it was very weird to watch Bin this game for me because when I was watching Bin, I've seen him play versus Kennen, it feels like so many times. Like, he's a master of playing these matchups because he just used to blind Jax all the time in LPL and he would just get counterpicked every single game. So you get counterpicked every single game, you play the Jax permanently, and then you end up always performing. Like, he just knows how to navigate the matchup. And especially when I saw this, I thought that Ajay was just... Normally, this is the type of mistake where Bin will just start rolling you afterwards. You lose your flash, okay? Use your flash, you have to TP back. I just feel like at some point, when Pin is 6, he's just gonna like flash on you and just win. But one thing to take away from this game is that this was a game where they went for the Aurora Yone trade and it didn't end up mattering at all. Like, this was a weird draft. Actually, what ended up happening? They just first picked Aurora over Yone. That was the idea from BLG. I mean, that shows how low the prio is by BLG on the Yone. Which is why I was really surprised when we got later on into the tournament, where's the G2 versus BLG. I was really surprised that that we even got like... Oh, actually, no, never mind. Yeah, BLG was banning Yone on blue side. So this just shows, bro. This literally just shows the mindset here from BLG. So it's even worse than I think the T1 situation where they really look like they don't want to play Yone at all. So that's going to be pretty huge for Hanwha Life. Now, Hanwha Life, what is their priority on Skarner Bin? Because I feel like I haven't seen much Peanut Scar. I think I saw it once. Didn't he play one Skarner game? He played it here. I don't even remember this game really. But he hadn't been prioing it very hard. Like, this is a crazy draft, no? I guess it's just specifically with Yone, he wanted to go Sejuani. And then this game, I mean, I think the Zyra is really fake. Seems really crazy that Skarner is going through all the way in these types of drafts. The other one, Hanwha Lifers. Yeah, no Skarner here. They're banning Skarner on blue side, which is kind of crazy. Banning Skarner on blue side again. I mean, it is Canyon, but they're banning Skarner on blue side. I don't know. For me, I think that this is something we need to look at. We got to look further into that because Hanwha Life should be playing Skarner. And it's something that BLG looks comfortable on. So that's like one of the power picks that I think BLG might be able to trade for. Like, let's say you give Yone to Hanwha Life. If you're willing to actually play Skarner Aurora into it, maybe that's an angle. Maybe that's a Yone. The thing is, like, Knight has played Yone, but I just remember he played it like a couple times and it was just not him, you know? But it used to not be that you had to play Yone. Right now, it feels like you have to play Yone. Before, it felt like you had to play Corki Tristana. And you could play Yone if you want as a third pick, or you could play Smolder, Lucian, other things like that. So let's look at Knight stats. I remember he played one Yone game and then they just like dropped it after this. Yeah, there was this one versus AL. He played one, AL beat him, and then they just like kind of dropped it after. Like, he was playing some Yone. He played it twice versus Weibo. It's okay. Here it's LGD. It doesn't really count. This game is versus LNG. Just decent. Just feels like at this tournament, he's not comfortable on it. I think the other thing you have to consider is, like, at this point, it was kind of like Corki and Tristana were getting banned a lot. And there was also Fearless Draft earlier on in the season, right? So a lot of these Yone games, it used to kind of work like Corki, Tristana were traded every single game. Or if one was banned, you'd ban the other. And then Yone was like the only other thing that people were willing to play. And as things progressed, Tristana got nerfed, Corki got nerfed, and Lucian and Zeri started coming in, and Smolder started coming in as well. So you didn't need to play Yone as much later on. And as soon as you had the option to not really play Yone, it seemed like Knight was much more willing to play something like Corki, Smolder, like Zeri. Like, all these picks were actually pretty good for him.